don't know how much of that was.
So how are the accommodations there?
I'm sleeping in a living room.
In the living room. How does that work?
I just have like an area behind the couch. That's my little area.
And so they're okay with that.
Yeah.
And you're living out of a suitcase and.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm excited to have like a door that I can shut when I get my apartment, but I'm also excited because the girl whose room I'm subletting said she's leaving her dresser.
Oh.
So I'll be able to, for June and July, I'll be able to get everything out of my suitcase.
So
and put
right
it in
now you are
dressers.
literally living out of a suitcase. Mm-hmm. That is your storage area.
Yeah, I have my 2 suitcases just unzipped with stuff in them. Which, I mean, when you're looking for clothes every day, you can't be organized.
Your dirty clothes or.
I've got a dirty clothes hamper. I brought my hamper, so I've got that at least.
But yeah, well, it would be like.
Did you sublet your room here?
No, I couldn't find anybody. I even tried to sublet it for $200 and nobody.
Geez, that's strange.
Well, it was just like, I would have to do it illegally because I have my rent paid through August, and so I wouldn't be able to I didn't want to get anybody to do it who I didn't know.
Yeah.
Partially because I didn't want Miranda and Richie to have to live with a stranger, but partially because it was going to have to be done under the table, and I wanted somebody who I knew well enough to know that they weren't just some random person off the street who was going to screw me over.
Yeah.
Because I have had that experience.
So Miranda and Richie are still in the house?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go home. Why not?
They got jobs.
Because they have to work, yeah, and they have to pay rent.
Yeah, I guess. Well, so for you, it's like being on a trip or something for a month. Mm-hmm. And living out of a suitcase.
It is, yeah. It felt like, because I was in Muncie last night, Miranda and I went out, and it was weird to be in Muncie, but it wasn't weird that I was in Muncie. It was weird that I wasn't going to be in Muncie for long. Mm-hmm. It was weird that I was visiting Muncie, and really Chicago was my long-term thing at that point, you know?
Yeah.
Because coming back to Muncie felt like I should be staying there.
Yeah. Well, your room is still set up in Muncie, so. Mm-hmm. You did sleep in a real bed, and
I started to pack my stuff before I left. So there's a lot of stuff's in boxes, but I still have a bed, and I still have my own space at least.
Do you have more packing to do this weekend?
I should get some done. Although the way my internship's looking, it seems like I'm going to be able to come home a couple times.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to try to get some done, but I'm not going to stress myself out about.
Well, yeah, that would take a lot of stress off if you go, I'll get it next time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's good. And it's not that bad a drive, is it?
No, you did it.
Is it? Well, we did it.
It's about 4.5 hours to Muncie, 3.5 hours to Indy.
That's about right.
Well, Muncie is further north.
The way the highways work, you have to go to Indy and then to Chicago.
Well, you got to come down 65 to 865 to 465. Isn't that the way? The way we used to go from here is, or let's say come back from here, is 65. The 865 cutoff takes you to 465, and then you come part way around the loop, and then you go back. You have to retrace your steps back north.
So it takes longer to go north than it would to just go to, because when you're at 465, you're in Indy. 465 is Indy.
Yes.
So when I go home, home, I get off 465 and I'm home. Yeah. Actually, I go 70. Instead of going 465, I go 65 to 70 because 70 lets off right on Shadeland.
Oh, yeah. That would make sense. But
if I'm coming to Muncie, I essentially have to go Chicago to Indy, back up to Muncie.
Well, I think your dad and I did this. We looked for, because it does not make sense to come.
It doesn't.
But there really isn't a good. I'm sure you could find some back road.
There isn't, because Miranda is from Fort Wayne, which is even further north, and it takes her even longer. You can go from Fort Wayne to Chicago essentially, but it still takes longer because of the way you have to go. So I could go Muncie to Fort Wayne to Chicago, or I could go Muncie to Indy to Chicago, but it takes the same amount of time. Hmm.
And if you take those back roads, you could be behind farm equipment or.
Yeah.
Well, remember when we drove one of the cars out here, and we were strictly following the GPS,
Yeah.
and it took us the, quote, shortest route, which was really slow. I mean, we sort of knew our way around at that point. We weren't confident enough to do it totally on our own, but we were kind of going, where is this
the
thing
really
taking
slow
us?
time was when we hit rush hour on 465.
Well, we were on back roads too. I don't remember what they were. Well, anyway, so it's 4.5.
It's
I was-
4.5 to Muncie. 3.5 to Indy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Which is why yesterday I came in town and I just stopped to see my mom for a couple hours and then went up to Muncie because I was basically at my mom's house anyway
Yeah.
by the time I head back up to Muncie.
yeah, I thought that was strange, but I see what you mean. And is the town Avondale? What's the town that you're in?
I'm in Chicago.
I thought you were in
I'm in the neighborhood Andersonville.
Andersonville. Oh,
Yeah.
crap.
But
You
it's
know,
part
you,
of Chicago.
you
Yeah,
told
it's
us
in
that
Chicago.
day, and all I remembered was the A. So I was looking around on Google Maps, and I
no.
thought it was Avondale.
It's Andersonville.
Andersonville. I'll
Just
have
like
to look.
Wrigleyville is just a section of Chicago.
Yeah, they're neighborhoods. And Chicago's broken into neighborhoods essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, they do the same thing San Francisco does with all their neighborhoods.
So I probably couldn't find Andersonville on a map, could I?
Probably not.
Because it's a neighborhood.
I think you have to get a city map of San Francisco to get Noe Valley.
Like, what are some cross streets?
I mean, I am at essentially Clark and Summerdale.
Okay, I know where Clark is, because the ballpark's on Clark.
I mean, Clark goes all the way
Yeah,
through
Clark
Chicago,
is that-
so you
Clark
know
is
where
that
Clark
angle.
is, but
Well, one where Clark sort of goes from being north-south to now north-south to angled is about at what's the park called? Right by the lake there. What's that park called? Come on.
Millennium Park.
No,
Lakeshore Park?
No, it has a military name.
Oh shoot.
It's the one where Obama gave a speech.
No. That's Grant. That's Grant
That's what
Park,
I'm thinking of.
and that's downtown.
Yeah.
But this one is, it's where the zoo is. Lincoln Park.
Lincoln.
Which
Park.
is also a neighborhood. Lincoln Park is a neighborhood.
Okay, so where are you from?
I'm very essentially right next to Lincoln Park.
Oh,
I have friends who live in Lincoln Park, and I walked to their apartment the other day, and it was about a 25-minute walk.
well,
That's
then
how
you
Lincoln
are
Park.
not far from the ballpark.
No.
Ah,
Andersonville is an awesome area. Like, I'm super excited to have my own apartment for the sake of the space, but almost nothing beats living in Andersonville. I mean, it's a 15-minute walk from the theater, so I've been walking to work every day. And it's just like shops and restaurants, and it's very just like community neighborhood. Just a really cool little area. Yeah.
well, that's a neat experience.
Yeah.
But your apartment is not there.
My apartment is in Ravenswood, which isn't too much further away,
Yeah, I've
but
heard of Ravenswood.
far enough that I can't walk. If it tells you anything, I'm a 15-minute walk from the theater right now. I'd be about an hour and 5-minute walk from
Oh,
the theater, which I mean, it's walking, so it's not like I'm like that much further,
And are you
but
north
few miles.
of Lincoln
Yeah.
Park or?
I don't know. I'm really bad at directions. I don't know.
okay.
So where you are now, you're not far from the lake.
No, we can walk to the beach.
Well, it's all trade-offs, isn't it? Like we were talking about the deal with Isaac, So now you got a kind of a crappy place to stay, but it's in a great location. Now you're going to have a better place, but yeah, that's life. So the internship is not much different than you thought. It's basically grunt work
Yeah, it's
and nothing
more
artistic.
It's more relaxed than I thought it was going to be, I guess. I mean, the first day I went in, and Tara, who's the artistic director there, was basically just showing me around the theater. It was my first day, and saying, like, here's some stuff you're going to do. I went in, like dark, nice jeans, and, like, a nicer shirt and a blazer, so not, like, dressed up, but, like, looking nice. And Tara showed up in yoga pants and a sweatshirt. So I was like, okay, this is the kind of place I'm at. Like, it doesn't matter what I wear. I'm going to be working events where I'm going to try to I mean, I don't think I need to look nice. I just probably need to not be a bum. And then there's a gala in June that we all like get very dressed up for. But for the most part, it's just very relaxed. Come and get stuff done.
How long has that theater existed?
The company itself has existed
Did
for...
I just stop it?
No. The company itself has existed for like 16 years, but they've only had the space for... No, the company itself has existed for 21 years, I think. They've only had the space for like 4.
Oh,
Yeah. 4 or 5, I think.
so they're just starting to feel comfortable in it.
And they have a production going on right now.
Yeah, that my friend Jess is in.
Have you seen it?
Yes, it's fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really, I mean, it's getting like incredible reviews.
What's the name of it?
It's called Dryland.
See if we can look it up. Dryland. Remember that, Norma. You can remember that.
DL, on the DL. Dryland.
A baseball related reference. You mean better than a Ball State production?
I mean, yeah, it's also just like an amazing play. Like, it's not that Ball State couldn't do it justice, like if we did it, but like the actors in it are incredible. I think that if we got 3 people at Ball State, we could do it, but it's just fantastic play.
What kind of experience do the people involved in the theater have?
Are they all
What does
sort of
that
young,
mean?
sort of young actors?
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, it depends. So there's the ensemble, which are like the people who are like employed by the theater, like officially, and then, but nobody in Dryland is in the ensemble. They auditioned for the part. They're all younger, but at the same time, this show is about high schoolers.
oh, so,
So yeah, I mean, I think the main girl is actually like 28, but Jess is 22, I think.
So what about the core staff of the theater?
Well, there's 3 people who like work at the theater: the artistic director, the managing director, and then one other person. And Tara, who's the artistic director, my guess is that she's like 50,
oh,
maybe late 40s.
So she's somebody you can learn a lot from.
Yeah, yeah.
oh, that's pretty cool.
She actually started the theater company with Karen at Ball State.
Oh,
Not at Ball State, but like Karen. And then they parted ways because they realized they could either work together professionally or be friends, but there was no way they were going to be able to do both.
Yeah.
And so Karen separated herself from the theater.
Yeah.
But she's about Karen's age. I think they're about the same age.
Yeah, sort of like being married and working at the same company or working in the same mom and pop. I don't know how. Well, that's interesting. So there's quite a range of ages and experiences. And the 3 people who are working there, this is their living, right?
Yeah.
This is not a hobby. They don't have day job. I mean, this is their day jobs. So you can make a living doing it. Do you suppose they make a good living?
I think they do. Tara seems like she does.
well, she's 50 and still doing it.
Well, but you don't know. I mean, you don't know her situation.
She's also got a husband who is an incredibly successful actor in the Chicago theater community, so he makes good money, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, but they're making, so their entire family income comes from the theater business. Well, that's encouraging, isn't it?
And granted, she's like the artistic director of a theater, like she is the head of the theater,
but it's not a big theater, right?
Right, it's not. I mean, it's getting bigger. They've got big donors, which is really how a theater survives, is having wealthy board members and wealthy donors. But I mean, the theater's becoming more successful. Granted, it's 21 years old. You know?
How many seats in the theater?
Tickets, you mean?
The actual theater space itself is very small. I don't know how many seats it is. I would guess.
I guess
50.
that's just the reality. Arts need patrons, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean,
People
you
who like
just
to
don't
see
make
the
it on
arts
ticket
community.
sales alone.
Yeah, they
And
also.
symphonies don't.
part of the income is they own their theater space, but whenever they're not using it, they rent it out to other theaters.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, a run of a show, they'll get paid $1,000, $1,500 for the use of the space, which could be like 2 weeks of just letting someone use a building that they own.
You got to make it all different ways, don't you? But it's encouraging to know that even in a small theater that's not well known, I mean, not nationally known or something, that you can make a living. And it's all up from there. I mean, that's the...
Well, there are a lot of people who want to see the arts continue.
Oh, sure, that's what patrons are all about.
Without the arts
I went to the board meeting on Monday, I think. Monday, maybe it was Tuesday. Monday or Tuesday. And most of the board are not theater people. They're like
business community.
They're wealthy people in the business community who are interested in the mission of Rivendell. And really that's what a lot of it comes down to, from what I'm learning, is that Rivendell does theater about women for women, is like their mission. And so they get a lot of donors and a lot of board members from people who are like very invested in women's issues. You know, they're not necessarily theater people, but because they're invested in women's issues, they support the cause. They also have, like, this last show, the show they're doing right now, they're like teamed up with Planned Parenthood, stuff like that they like make those alliances to...
You think Planned Parenthood is kicking in some money?
I don't know if they're kicking in money or if they're kicking in resources.
Yeah.
It's possible because, I mean, the show's about abortion, and so it's very possible that Planned Parenthood is like provided them with a lot of research, you know, which is valuable as well. I mean, that's time essentially.
Yeah.
Is what you're doing. Is what you're donating.
Better facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you probably heard about the Oklahoma bill. Did you? Mm-hmm. That's unbelievable, you know, because you don't have to be a genius to figure out that is unconstitutional on its face.
Yeah.
So what are they doing?
They're trying
it's not like
to make a conversation that doesn't need to happen.
Yeah. They just are relentless. And it's not like Oklahoma doesn't have any problems, you know. They got a big budget shortfall. They're talking about cutting back on schools and, you know, public services in general. And here the legislature is doing this. And it's going to invite court challenges, which costs the state money.
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
This study came out that ranked Indianapolis the most unhealthy city in the country for like the 4th year in a row or something. And
unhealthy in what way?
So I was reading like the criteria for it. Some of it is like how many people smoke.
Right.
Some of it is
it's
like
number of parks. It's
a lot of it. A lot of it is like government spending essentially. So it's like how much money is the government putting into parks, like wellness programs, things like that. Which is interesting because, like, I think a lot of people in Indiana smoke. I think that's a big thing. I also think that it says something that, like, maybe it's not saying, like, we are unhealthy, but it's saying, like, our city government won't give us, like, a healthy environment, you know? Mm-hmm. That's, like, what a lot of it is. A lot of the criteria seemed like environment more than actual, like, health statistics, which is interesting.
Well, it's a mix because it's also the availability of health care and the quality of that care.
Yep.
You know, so it's not only how many hospitals and clinics,
but how good are they?
How well they're rated and what they cost. And yeah, I've read these reports. But a lot of it is, comes down to, is the government sort of dedicated to
health? Yeah.
And some are and some aren't. Mm-hmm. So what about the other play? Your hobby?
It's really interesting. I think it's going really well. It's a devised piece, so we're basically building it from the ground up. Like, we don't have a script. We got to the point at the end of this week where we have sort of an act one, like a rough act one. And I think we have kind of an outline of act two. We just have to actually, like, do it. It's a super interesting process, especially because it's about half Ball State people, like Ball State acting graduates, and so they all have a common vocabulary, whereas there's this other half people who basically learned the same things but with a different vocabulary, like the same like techniques and everything like that. So some of the process is just getting everybody on the same page, because
There's
when you're
a different vocabulary.
I mean, there's techniques, there's theory, there's acting theory and things like that you learn. And like, for example, there's this exercise called flocking, which we call which at Ball State, the acting program, which is like a chorus work kind of exercise.
Yeah.
And like we figured out that almost everybody else in the room had done this. They just called it something differently. And so, like, how do we figure... And there were maybe, like, slightly different techniques to it and things like that. Like, how do we all get on the same page? Because things like that, when you're... One of the benefits of having an acting degree and being trained in acting is being able to say, oh, I did this acting exercise that at the time was out of place and abstract, but I see how it could fit into this, like, movement piece. Or I see how it could fit into this scene or whatever. And so making sure that everybody's on the same page, like, figuring out how we can get everybody working with the same language. And I think if it was like 20 people all from different places, that wouldn't be as much of an issue because everybody would have a different vocabulary. I think the issue became half of our cast had the same vocabulary because they came from Ball State.
And so
and the other half each had their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, how do we not make the Ball State people completely take over?
Every profession has its jargon. But I kind of thought that if you were trained, like college trained, in that profession, that the jargon would be standardized.
Well, it's not, just because different programs focus on different things. Like, there's some college programs in acting that are very text-based, and they, like, talk about, like, text analysis a lot. Our program is very movement-based. They do a lot of, like, very abstract. They do, like, a lot of, like, Greek chorus work and, like, very abstract, like, movement and, like, finding your physicality. They do a whole section of, like, their sophomore, like, one of the sophomore semesters where they do animal work. And they all, like, have their own animal and, like, figure out how to, like, they, like, do a ton of research on the, like, habitat and, like, environment and movement of this animal. And part of the thing is to figure out how to, like, fully embody that. And then at the end of the semester, they have, like, battles. They'll put, like, two animals together, but what they're supposed to do is know the habitat, know, like, the like, environment of this animal enough to know how they would fight and what would make each animal win.
That's weird.
It's really
I can
interesting.
see how that definitely would carry over into acting. Am I wrong? If you're playing a character, so you learn the background. Well, like actors and actresses do when they're doing a movie and about a real person. So they research that person. The idea being that you can be that person and not just act that person.
Well, and I think a lot of it too is that theater's becoming a lot more abstract and a lot more movement based and a lot less just like let's stand and talk, and a lot more like it's all like there's parts of theater and dance that are almost starting to intersect. Like I've seen a lot of theater pieces that are very like physical. I also think that they do a lot of exercises like that because it gets actors in a place where they know how to use their body, and so if you're completely aware of like how you move and how to alter the things that you do naturally in order to fit a character. So you might walk a certain way, but the
character wouldn't walk.
But the character wouldn't walk that way. So the more aware you are of your own physical, like, traits and your own physicality and your own body, the more you're able to make those switches. Yeah.
It's a science in some ways.
But yeah, the show has been a lot of that, and then in the last like week, we've been trying to get the story really together. It's based on the city of Herculaneum, which was the city that was destroyed at the same time as Pompeii, but nobody knows about it because everybody knows about Pompeii. And it's more strictly based on this poem called The Last Days of Herculaneum, was kind of like the base, like, source material for us. But it's also just about the event of Herculaneum. And, you know, we're taking it a little more abstract way. We found research of, like, actual people that were found after the event. And there's 3 of them that we decided to focus on. Well, kind of 4 of them we decided to focus on, but 3 stories. One was...
Really? Remains were found? Mm-hmm. Buried in the ash?
Mm-hmm. One was there was a baby left alone in a crib with no other people around. So we've kind of devised this story of, like, the parents. The story has ended up being more centered around the parents and, like, what does it take for these parents to leave their baby alone. The other thing is...
Well, a big volcano would do it.
Well, the other thing is there was this big festival the day before.
This is in reality?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like the Vulcan festival where they, like, honored the gods.
Okay.
It was like one of the, like... It was like the festival of Dionysus that the Greeks used to have. But it was like, do you know, it was just a big celebration. It's basically a big party, like celebrating, honoring the gods. There's sacrifices, all that kind of weird stuff. So it's this interesting thing where, like, this festival leading into the disaster. And what we've kind of done, so we have the story of, like, the parents. There was a woman found wearing 2 rings, like 2 wedding rings. And so we've made, like, kind of a love story between her and a soldier, and he, you know, like how did she end up alone? And we also found a story of a soldier who was found with a baby, and so we've kind of decided that, like, the way their story is going to end is it's this love story between this woman and the soldier feeling that it's his duty goes back to save this baby, and they end up separated and dying separately.
And the baby?
And the baby's with the soldier.
But the baby alone in the cradle?
Is a different baby.
Is that going to be a loose end, or are you going to tie it up?
They're separate stories. I mean, I don't think it'll be a loose end. And then there was a little boy found next to a dog. So we've got this kind of fun, I mean, like, they die in the end. So, but this fun little story of this little boy and his dog. It's actually, there's a girl playing it, so this child and the child's dog. And so you get this, like, cute kid, like, they're best friends, you know, that we're playing with the idea that the kid is, like, homeless and kind of alone, but, like, finds friendship in this dog. And then we've made the gods a character. And so there's 3 gods that we've incorporated. And the idea is that there's this big festival for the gods, and something happens during it where the gods, because, like, both Greek and Roman gods were petty and childish. Like, if you look at the stories,
always quarreling.
Yeah, and so the idea is that during this festival, these gods get in some kind of argument, and it causes the volcano.
Oh.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
So we're incorporating the gods into the story and seeing how they manipulate the world and how they, like, interact with people, because these people also believe that the gods walked among them.
Well, there's a lot of depth to the content.
And you guys
so it's a matter of, like, how do we take all these 10,000 ideas we have, pick them apart a little bit, and actually put them into a story.
And you are creating this while you are sort of rehearsing it. I mean, it's a mixture of the two. Did somebody come up with the original idea?
Yeah, I mean, the show was always Herculaneum, like, from auditions. So we knew that it was going to be based on the story of Herculaneum. From there...
And the remains that were found?
That was just research done. And
but, I mean, was that from the beginning? Is like we've got...
I don't know. I came in 3 weeks late.
Okay.
My guess is that it, you know, they talked about the event and talked about the research, and then in conversation we're like, oh, it could be really interesting if... Yeah, obviously, like, these stories we're completely making up.
Yeah.
But if, like, the fate of these people is grounded in, like, things that actually, like, research, like, things that actually happened.
Didn't we play a game at one point where you knew you were given a few facts and you had to create a story around it?
Maybe.
Was that a game that we played?
I don't know. That's kind of what I do for
Do you remember
a
that?
living now. I don't
think
know.
it was when Emily was in high school she was doing that. Well, anyway, that kind of a thing. So you take just the barest kernel of an idea or a fact or something and just go, well, what could have caused that?
Yeah.
Well, that's got to be a lot of fun. So there's your creative outlet. If it isn't on the internship.
Yeah, it
It's
has
there.
been. It's been really cool. I mean, the kind of bummer thing is that we open July 15th, and there's a week off before that. So, I mean, come basically the first week of July, I'm done with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll have all of July and a couple weeks in August. But I'll also have more free time, so hopefully, if I can afford it, I'll be able to go see show, which I would love to. I need to, like, make connections, a lot of discounted tickets, because I think going and seeing shows at as many theaters as I can is going to be super beneficial to me, just to meet people. And so I need to start figuring out, like, what theaters.
Or even volunteering.
Well, yeah. Or
Yeah.
something. Being involved, because that's the scene. It's a different theater scene than down here.
Well, and what I found is that one of the best things I can do is go to shows where I know somebody in the show.
Yeah.
Because afterward, I see them, and maybe, I mean, the director's usually not at the show, but they are involved enough in the company that I can say, this was really interesting, and they know that I came to the show, you know?
Yeah, or when you go to meet them some other time, you can say, oh, I went to the show that you were directing. And
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't have a ton of free time right now, specifically in the evening, so it's going to be really once the show opens. And Brent said that he might have another show for me to assistant direct right after this in, like, July and August. He's just not sure if he's even doing it yet. So he's, like, not giving me a ton of details just because he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, so the summer will unfold.
Yeah. That would be great, though. I would love to do that. We'll see.
So Isaac, the Olds obviously made it to New York.
Yeah. He didn't
And
tell me
he's-
there were any problems.
And you said he was wandering around New York City looking up the Empire State Building, but isn't he living outside of the city?
The theater space where they perform, it's a, like, sort of like a Shakespeare in the Park kind of thing. It's outside.
The park, the park isn't Central Park,
So
is it?
no, the venue is in Connecticut,
Okay.
but they are rehearsing in New York City.
Oh.
So they're actually rehearsing like a block away from Times Square.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So he's in the city every day, but he's living where the theater space is, essentially.
So he's commuting
He's in Connecticut. It's about an hour commute. Yeah.
For a
Take
kid
it.
who's hardly been out of Indianapolis, this
Yeah.
is quite an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said he's having a lot of fun. I think he's getting pretty homesick, and I think it'll obviously get better. I think a lot of his homesickness, though, comes from the fact that he just, like, he didn't, like, I went to Chicago and I have a ton of friends already out there. He went by himself completely.
Well, and you've traveled enough that you have the experience of being away from home and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's all hitting him at once. Well, he'll be all right.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's having a
I mean,
great time.
he's gregarious enough. He'll
Yeah.
make friends. And
Yeah,
that'll make
he
him-
has been, I think. He went out drinking with a bunch of people last night.
Yeah.
He called me, he said, I'm in a bar in Times Square. I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I said, are drinks really expensive? And he was like, well, I got a pint of Budweiser for $5, so, which isn't awful. Like, for being for being a bar in Times Square,
No,
I was
that's
like,
not bad.
Yeah, that's
that's
bad.
not terrible.
Tell them to find Finnerty's.
Finnerty's? What's
Finnerty's.
Finnerty's?
It's the
Finnerty's
bar for all the
is
Giants
a
fans
big
gather
Giants
to
hangout.
watch ball games.
That's funny.
We've heard that if you go to Finnerty's in your Giants gear, they'll give you a free beer.
Cool. Maybe I will. Well, because I'm going to go, hopefully. I don't have definite plans, but I'm kind of definitely planning it in my head so that I actually do it. I want to go see his show. His show closes July 3rd, which is a Sunday. So what I'd like to do is Miranda is probably going to go with me, and then Austin had mentioned that he wants to go. I just need to see if he's, like, actually real about that.
Yeah.
If we could drive straight there, it's like from Indy, No, from Muncie, I think it's like 11 hours. From Chicago would be about 15, but we'd probably leave from Muncie. So it's about 11 hours. And if we could stay, I would love to stay like the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. See his show on the 3rd, spend 4th of July in the city, which would be awesome, and then drive back. And the good thing is, too, that his family is going to be there at that same time. So
that's nice if they're going to go.
Yeah, so he's going to spend 4th of July with his family in the city so we could tag along and all do something, which would be a lot of fun.
That sounds like a good plan.
Is this a new experience for his family, or have they been there?
They all went to New York when he was little, but he doesn't really remember it. But he's the youngest, too, so...
Well, lots changed since
Yeah.
Well,
But
not
he's
that
able
far.
to find his way around and everything.
I mean, he's with a lot of people who live there.
Yeah.
So, I don't
That
think he's
helps.
doing it on... I mean, the first day he was there, he called me and he was like, I'm exploring the city, where should I go? And I was like, well, what are you near? He was like, the Empire State Building. And I was like, go to the Empire State Building. And he was like, yeah, it's like $40. He got there. He was like, it's like $40 to go to the top. But I stood at the bottom and that was fun. And then I was not really doing anything at that moment. So I got on Google Maps and I was like, I searched the Empire State Building. And I was like, ooh, you're like 3 blocks away from Broadway. Like, go to Broadway. You know, so I was like kind of getting like the overhead view of the city and being able to be like, ooh, go here, go here.
Yeah.
It was fun. I was literally like mopping the theater while he was sending me pictures of New York City, though. I was like, great.
Well, Grand Central Station is not too far from there. I don't know exactly where. But it's, it's not something you make a day trip out of or anything, but it's pretty amazing with the amount of marble. And, it's Grand Central Station in New York City. It's pretty impressive.
No place quite like it.
It's worth a walkthrough sometime.
I'm sure he will. I mean, he's
Well,
got
there's
time.
tons of stuff.
The thing is, it's kind of cool because he gets out of rehearsal at like 5 p.m. and he's in the city for rehearsal. So he's got the whole the last few days. He's just spent the rest of the evening.
Is he taking a
wandering.
Train back and forth or something?
I think so.
He couldn't be driving.
No, he's not. It's public transportation of some sort.
Yeah.
He said last night he called me and he was like, yeah, the last train leaves at like 11:30. So he basically has, if he wants it, from like 5 p.m. to 11:30 and he's been getting back earlier than that, of course, because he has rehearsal at 9 a.m. the next day. But like he didn't have rehearsal today, so last night he stayed out pretty late.
What Shakespeare play is he doing?
Hamlet.
And what part is he in?
He's got 4 or 5 smaller parts throughout the play. But he said, because most of the apprentices do like a little pre-show thing, but he got put in the main show. So he's like kind of special. It's him and one other girl who like got put in the main show but are apprentices. But he said a lot of the people in the cast are older, like significantly older, but a couple of them like just graduated from Juilliard. Yeah, and like
stuff.
the woman he's staying with has a Harvard degree and then studied at some like very fancy Shakespeare conservatory. So like the people he's with are like the real deal.
How did he get this?
He applied?
He's Isaac. He waited too long to apply for internships and then found one with a late deadline where he didn't need a letter of recommendation and applied to it, and it was this.
You sound ticked.
I'm not ticked as much as it's just like Isaac just has this like stupid luck like that. It's just stupid.
He doesn't plot the course at all, does he?
It goes against your grain of planning.
I think what
doesn't it?
pisses me off is that for like 2 months I was just like applying to internships, and I was like, Isaac, you have to apply to internships. You're going to miss the deadline. You have to apply to internships. And then he missed the deadline, hadn't applied to anything, and still somehow got this.
So are you going to change your ways to be more like Isaac? No.
I don't have that kind of luck. I got to work for it.
You got your need to have everything organized and compartmentalized.
Well, maybe that's a little bit
Grandpa
of your grandma, the over planning thing.
I drive her.
Hopefully you don't have it to the extent that she does. You've heard about the vacation in Hawaii where we had to suggest that she just take Valium and just calm down, because it was like, well, at 10:15 we need to be over here to see the beach, and at
Well, I wanted to see everything. I don't want to miss anything.
See? That's what I'm talking about.
Have we been back there? No.
I don't know. Well, sounds like an interesting summer. It's going to be an interesting summer.
So far.
It's one you won't forget.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a lot more just like comfortable about things when I'm in my apartment. Just because right now, to some extent, I feel like I'm not on my own schedule.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I have.
You're in their way.
Well, I have a key to their apartment. Like, I can come and go as I want. That's not it. It's more just like, you know, my bedroom is a living room, and I feel like they're hesitant to hang out in the living room unless I want to hang out too, and it's just going to be nice to feel like I have an apartment that's mine. There was this incident. It was dumb. So, it's Evan, Zach, and Kevin is who I'm staying with. Kevin, well, the day I got there, someone mentioned, like, oh, Zach just did the dishes. There's a bunch of clean dishes. There were no dishes in the sink. And Kevin left for New York for a week, like last Friday. And like all last week, Kevin was like, I'm going to do the dishes. And he didn't do them. So then the day he left, I was kind of home by myself. Well, Evan was there. I was home and just didn't really have anything to do, so I did all the dishes. Because I figured they were at least a fourth mine. Like, they were all clean when I got there. And Zach got home and he was like, please tell me you didn't do these dishes. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, you really don't have to do that. Like, he almost seemed like he was upset with his roommates for, like, letting me do the dishes. Because I think he's just viewing me as a guest, which is very nice. The thing is, though, they don't have many dishes. They just don't. Like, they have, like, 2 pans, like, 4 plates. Like, they run out of dishes within 2 or 3 days. And I've been trying to cook more so that I'm not, like, ordering in, because that's expensive and unhealthy. So I, like, went grocery shopping and I've been trying to cook. But it's hard to wash a pan with a sink full of dishes. But I almost felt like I got scolded the last time I did the dishes, and nobody's done the dishes since then.
Please don't do the dishes, but we won't either.
Exactly. So I'm like, I really don't. I mean, I don't want to be the one who does the dishes all the time.
No,
but
that's a bad precedent.
But I don't mind doing the dishes. Like, when I get back on Sunday, if they haven't done the dishes, I'm probably going to just do them. Because genuinely, we, like, went... Evan and I...
maybe you ought to do all but, like, 1 or 2 and leave them in the sink. And then
Or just wash the ones you use.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to do, but I have, like, pans. Like, when there's a sink full of dishes, it's hard to wash a pan.
Sure.
You know?
Because the sink's full.
Yeah.
You don't have a split sink, huh?
No. And so, like, the other day... Here's how few dishes they have, okay? The other day, Evan and I walked down to the gas station after we got home from rehearsal, and we both got ice cream because we were going to just, like, hang out and eat ice cream. We both just got, like, a pint of Ben & Jerry's. And,
oh, jeez.
which, it wasn't that, I mean, like...
Sounds delightful.
Yeah. But Evan was like, we should probably get some plastic spoons. And I was like, what happened to all your spoons? And he was like, oh, we only have, like, 1. And I was like, okay, we'll buy plastic spoons.
Hello.
Weird.
Yeah, John.
Well.
I'm just fine. I've had some contractors out.
You are kind of in between being a resident and a guest there.
It's funny. It's been a funny dynamic because I'm, like, trying not to be in their way. Well, and I also, like, went in not knowing if they wanted money from me. Like, I have kind of budgeted to give them some money if I need to. But I really don't think they want money from me. Because just, like, the way they act is, like the other day, one of the first days I was there, we got home from rehearsal and I just made, like, a big pot of pasta. And I was like, hey, do you guys, like, want some, like, pasta's cheap, I don't care. I was like, do you guys want some of this pasta? Like, the first few days I was there, I was really trying to, like, cook for everybody, just to kind of say thank you. And every time they were like, this is so, like, thank you. You, like, really don't have to do this. This is awesome. They're just, like, so appreciative for the little things that I do that it makes me think that they're not going to want money from me. They're just, like, they also have joked a couple times. Like, one day we were trying to decide, like, what to watch. Or we were trying to decide where to eat or what to watch or something like that. And I, like, put my opinion in, and jokingly they were like, yeah, well, we pay rent. But it was just like a joke, you know?
Well, maybe that's the way to handle it, a little humor. You know,
Yeah.
like drop hints like, hey, I live here, I'm not a guest. Or, you know, something. But I can see how your status is kind of in between.
Right? And I'm really I'm really willing to do the dishes a little bit more than everyone else does and to cook for everybody once a week.
Which
and
would make sense if they're not asking you for any money.
Exactly.
So yeah, that would make sense. But, you know, they might not see it that way.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, they see it differently because Evan was there while I did the dishes. And at the end, he was just like, I asked him where stuff went a couple times, and, like, he knew I was doing dishes. And
he could have helped.
Well, yeah, and at the end, he was like, oh, by the way, thanks for doing that. And I was almost a little bit pissed by how unappreciative he was.
Yeah.
But then Zach was, like, weirdly over-appreciative to the point where he was, like, almost mad at me for doing them.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I just don't know.
So the one guy seemed like he sort of expected it. And the other guy was sort of offended.
And I think here's the big difference is that Evan used to be Isaac's roommate. And so I've essentially lived with Evan before. And so I think me living there to him is just like, oh, we're living together again.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It's like we're acting like roommates. You know? Some of those dishes were mine, so he's just like, oh, thanks for doing that. You know? Whereas Zach, I've obviously never lived with. So he's like... Zach is also just... He and I have had a few conversations recently where he is chivalrous to the point that I think it's a little sexist. Because he... And we've actually had this conversation where, like... We'll be, like, we were walking home from rehearsal, me and him and Evan, like, they're both in the show, so we go to rehearsal together and come back together, which is nice. But we were walking back, and Zach, like, burped, and he was like, sorry, Emily. And I was like, me? Like, what? And he was like, I don't know, it's just, like, something in my brain that's just, like, if I'm with a woman, you're, like, he was like, I grew up being taught that when you're with a woman, you're more polite, and you... like, chivalry. And I was like, I get it, but it's also like, I'm trying to hang out with you as a friend, and you're still, like, I don't need you to apologize to me when you burp. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like a Victorian lady, you know?
Yeah, but it's interesting that a guy that young, he's young, right?
Mm-hmm. I think he just grew up in a really small town with, like, really... like distinct values, which makes me think that that's why he was like, you don't have to do the dishes, you're a guest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to draw the line. You seem to have very definite ideas of what you think is sexist and not. But to me, as a guy, and especially an old guy, it's not at all easy to figure out.
Well, and it's not like, I'm super offended. How sexist of you.
To not be sexist, are you supposed to be rude? And,
no, you should
a little bit more rude to women than you are men, just to show that you're not sexist?
What would not have been sexist in that moment is if, because Evan was with me too, is if he'd been like, sorry guys.
Okay.
Rather than like, he's with two people... And specifically, I was, you know, or if he had just not said anything, I would have been like, all right, you're being equally rude to both of us. Like, you know?
Yeah. So it was the sorry Emily that got
it was the specifically, I'm with more than one person, but one of them is a woman.
Yeah.
And so, and it's the thing is, he and I actually had this conversation, like, actually when that happened. Because I said, why are you apologizing to me specifically? And he doesn't get offended. Like, he genuinely, like, is interested in the conversation where I'm like, it's weird to say that you being overly polite is sexist. It's not the fact that you're being overly polite. It's the fact that you're being overly polite only to the woman.
Unequally.
Yeah, unequally. It just divides it.
But boy, you're splitting hairs.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think in that moment it was just like,
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But I think you're really nitpicking at that point.
The conversation we had is like, I think being polite is fine. But I think being polite too, like if your brain is like, I must be polite all the time, that's totally fine. I think the point is just be polite equally.
Yeah, I agree. I see that.
Yeah.
I see that. Because then that means you're differentiating between the sexes, which is by definition sexist, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Okay.
It's just a funny dynamic figuring out how to live with these people.
Well, you've only got like 3 weeks more with them, right?
I've got like a week and a half.
When do you start with the apartment?
June 1st.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is like
so you're
not this coming Wednesday, but the Wednesday
you're not
after.
going to get all these things resolved, and it doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter, and it's not a problem. It's really not a problem. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
And that one of the things I love about Zach in particular is that I can be like, I think what you just said is interesting, and here's why, in my mind, that qualifies as sexist. And it's not,
and
he's not like,
get defensive and self.
He's like, oh, interesting, really, like, why do you think that? And it's a conversation, it's not, and maybe we disagree, but it's never me being like, you're a jerk. Like, he doesn't interpret it that way, whereas I think a lot of people would.
You're a jerk, and then he says, no, I'm not, you're a jerk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's probably healthy.
Yeah.
I'm reading an interesting book, now your dad suggested it to me, about essentially how people get locked into self-justification and how stupid it is, And so it's good to be able to call somebody on something like that and have their response be, oh,
yeah,
let's talk about that.
Well, I think what was funny was when that situation happened and I said, wait, why did you apologize to me? The real response was, because you're a woman.
Mm-hmm. He didn't say that initially, though.
He went, well, just because, oh. And I was like, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It puts you in a position of not being an equal.
Yeah, exactly.
As a woman, you become a lesser.
Exactly. No, it's not even. I don't even know that it's.
It's not even a lesser. It's different,
just different.
A different
it's
category.
Just categorized differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the conversation too was like,
people are really something.
Yeah. A lot of the conversation too was like, I live with you. Like you have to be willing to be a little bit rude around the people you live with. Like. When you're with people that often, you can't be polite all the time.
Or honest.
Or not, yeah. Like, you can burp in front of me.
Okay, I'm turning it off because my arm's getting sore. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Say goodbye. Oops.
Bye.
There's Grandma. She's hardly ever in these videos. There she is.
You're never in them.
No, I'm never. Well, I speak a lot. Okay, we're gone.